Episode 23 is called Why Old Me Won't Be Buying the New Tamron 70-210 f4 lens, but young me would. So Tamron are bringing out a new lens which is 70-210, but it's f4. And this costs around £700 or around $800 and weighs about 850 grams. So let's look at the other alternatives in the 70-200 lens range. My comparison are going to be based on Canon fit only because I have a Canon DSLR. So I'm not going to consider Nikon and Sony. I'm just going to look at Canon, but you can take my sort of thoughts and opinions and apply them to Nikon and Sony. At the end of the month, and that will be month June of 2018, the new Canon 70-200 f2.8 and f4 Mark III lenses are out. Now, they're really quite expensive. The Canon f2.8 Mark III IS lens comes in at £2,150. That's a lot for that lens. The f4 version is cheaper. It's just slightly over half price, but the f4 Mark III IS version is £1,300. And that weighs 780 grams. Now, there are lots of iterations of these Canon lenses. So we've got the Mark II version. So you can get the Mark II version, which is IS at f2.8 for £1,600. And the f4 Mark II with IS is £930. And the Canon f4 without IS is £558. There's also a Canon f2.8 with no IS, which is about £1,100. So the Tamron 70-200 f2.8 VC, and that's Tamron's version of IS, comes in at £1,350. And you can get an older version which doesn't have VC, again by Tamron, 70-200 f2.8, and that is £629. And of course there's Sigma. Now Sigma do a 70-200 f2.8 EX DG OS HSM, and that's £845. So if there's no price changes soon, because when a new lens comes out sometimes prices drop of the older lens, the Tamron 70-210 sits 10% higher than the Tamron 70-200 f2.8, and it's so much cheaper than all the alternatives available. So why would you need a 70-200? I don't actually have a 70-200 lens, but a 70-200 is really good for portraits. So your classic portrait lenses are an 85, a 135 and a 200mm. Well, a 70-200 covers those, gives you a lot of flexibility because you can change your focal length, and if it's a constant aperture one, it's really good. They're very large, hence why they're very expensive, particularly to get to 2.8. So that coupled with a 24-70, two lenses, 24-70, 70-200 can give you a really wide zoom range that could cover pretty much all of your photographic needs. So let's talk about this new Tamron 70-200 f4 lens. f4 is one stop above f2.8. So it gathers half the amount of light that an f2.8 lens gathers. The backgrounds will appear less blurred than the f2.8 equivalent, but not by much. So the lens is for Canon and Nikon DSLRs only. It's about 18 centimeters long, which is, for those of you who can remember the smaller ruler in school, that's 15 centimeters. It's a little bit longer than that, 1/5 longer in fact. It has vibration compensation, which claims to give 4 stops of vibration compensation control. And it has, this is what appeals to me, it has no lens creep because it's all internal zoom mechanisms, and it's a modest 67mm thread, and it comes with a lens hood. So why won't I be buying it? It sounds like a good lens. It's cheaper than the alternatives, it's compact, it's lightweight, it gives a good zoom range. Well, why won't the old me, and by old me I mean me today, why won't I buy it? Well, it's a very simple reason. I've already got an 85mm f1.8 and a 200mm f2.8 Mark II that work really nicely with my 5D Classic. Yes, I don't have a 135mm prime lens, but I've got 2 of those 3 lenses and I use them all the time. I don't think this lens would replace those lenses for me, and I wouldn't get a great resale value on those lenses because they're now quite old. So I'd just be buying it for the sake of convenience, but there isn't too much convenience saved. So my 85mm lens weighs 426 grams. My 200mm lens weighs 1.1 kilograms. It's quite a big lens, that. So that is a total of 1.5 kilograms for those two lenses. As I said before, the Tamron 70 to 210 weighs 850 grams. So if I got the Tamron 70 to 210 lens to replace me carrying around those two prime lenses, I'd only be saving 650 grams. Yeah. So what? And, I'm also unlikely to take two primes out with me. So in terms of my two primes, they approximately cover the start and the end of the zoom range of the Tamron. I could take both primes out with me if I want to, and I would make a modest weight saving. Is that modest weight saving worth £700? I don't think it is. Also, I'm using quite an odd camera. I'm using a 12 megapixel camera. I love the 5D Classic, and I have no plans on replacing it. So even if the Tamron is a lot sharper, I'm unlikely to notice it on a modest 12 megapixel sensor. I must say I do really like shooting portraits at 200mm, and the autofocus speed of the two lenses I have are fine, and therefore even if the Tamron 70 to 210 had much quicker autofocus, it wouldn't be a deal breaker for me because my lenses do the job and they do the job well, hence why I bought them. I'd also be losing 1 to 2 stops. That's not the end of the world. But I find when shooting with my 200mm lens, because there's no IS or there's no image stabilization, I need a really high shutter speed. So to go to f4, I wouldn't be getting a really creamy background, although the difference I suspect isn't as big as most people think it would. But compare that to f1.8 and yeah, we're starting to lose out. However, the Tamron does have vibration compensation up to 4 stops. And I think that's probably fairly accurate. I've used vibration compensation and it does allow you to get a lot slower shutter speed. And I have noticed, I can't shoot at 1/60th of a second with the 200mm lens. Particularly a person, it's all blurry. I have to shoot over 1/200th of a second. Otherwise I get blurry. And I'm not just quoting the reciprocal rule there. That's from my experience. So the old me, I've already got it. I'm not interested in the new boy. I don't see a reason to ditch and switch. And I did think that when the lens was announced. I thought, I've been there, done that, don't need to ditch and switch. But I considered, what about if I was just starting out? So my 5D Classic would be very cheap now to get access to a full frame camera. And maybe I reevaluate getting lots of primes. So if I was just starting out today, I probably would snap this lens up because it's £700 and it gives me all those focal ranges and it has IS. And it actually is a very good starter lens. I could probably do most of my photography just with that one lens and maybe just get 1 or 2 wide angles or a 24 to 70. So I take a lot of portraits and younger me took a lot of portraits and yes, the lens would be very good. It's lightweight and you probably heard me talk about not carrying around a lot of kit. And I know that having f4 over f2.8 wouldn't be a deal breaker, and it wouldn't be a deal breaker for younger me. Having VC, vibration control or image stabilization, if you want to call it that, would give me more flexibility when shooting. So here's the question. Could I just have 2 lenses if I was just starting out? Now I can't consider that because I have quite a lot of lenses and most of them are primes and I have a lot of lenses for different camera systems. But if I was starting out again, would I just have 2 lenses, 3 lenses? I don't know. What do you think? Would you have lots of lenses? So don't forget to check us out at patreon.com/160SPP, where you can find all the older episodes and you can also find some bonus content that I'll be putting up there. If you want to support me, please do on Patreon. If you don't want to support me, no worries. But thank you for listening, and if you can, do leave a comment, do leave a review, and give me your thoughts on the Tamron 70 to 210 f4.